And we're live. Welcome back to LOOPCast. Tom, Erica, and Josh. Quick turnaround. We were up watching the vice presidential debate, and guess what? We have moments, memories, memes, all the good times, all the bad times. And I have to
I
say,
like your alliteration there, Tom. That was really literary of you.
I love alliterations. One of my favorites. That might be one of my hidden, just simple pleasures in life. When you hit a good alliteration on someone, nothing
So
better.
satisfying.
There was a lot of alliteration going on last night. J.D. Vance probably brought the most literate Republican or Democrat debate performance I've seen in a long time, probably about 10 years. And we have all of the moments
in the 21st century.
21st century. And I just want to give a warm welcome here to everyone joining us live in the chat. There's plenty of you guys live with us last night. It was a lot of fun. And thank you for turning around, getting up with us this morning. But for all the audio listeners who maybe missed the debate, I just want to ask both of you right now, general feelings. We slept on it. How do you feel about how last night went?
I'm going to let Josh go first because he let me go first last night.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, J.D. Vance absolutely crushed it. I mean, you know, my friends and I were trying to talk about, like, when was the last time you saw a vice presidential debate that was so resounding? And you have to really go back to, like, Dick Cheney, torching Lieberman in 2000. I mean, it's hard to see something that was so lopsided. I mean, Tim Walz was way out of his element. It's like, if it weren't for the anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris would have made Josh Shapiro her running mate, and she would have had somebody who was ready for the big stage. Tim Walz was just not ready. The Great Walls of China was completely crumbling out there. He didn't know what the heck he was doing, and it's like he can get off and do 4 or 5 minutes, ranting about how abortion means, you're neighborly and all that kind of crap he does. And then let, Kamala Harris give her talk, a nice little intro warm up. But he's not ready to go 90 minutes toe-to-toe, certainly not with someone as good as J.D. Vance. And I can't help but think we were this close, as Brian, my boss, said, to having Doug Bugram, the governor of North Dakota, out there. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, J.D. Vance came out with like and it wasn't like slash and burn. He just just gotcha. I mean, just inflated the balloon. So effective.
Just to pick up on that a little bit, he could have come out, and I mean, J.D. Vance has the power the rhetorical power to just absolutely eviscerate Tim Walz. Like, he could have come out and mocked him and just pointed out, but I think his restraint was so admirable and so much more effective. Like, I was looking back at the exchange, I think we'll get into this, where the moderators are asking Tim Walz about the Tiananmen Square, how he claimed to have been there as the Democratic students upright. And then it turns out
in Hong Kong.
Right, in Hong Kong. Sorry, he claimed to have been over in Hong Kong during that time. He wasn't. He was over here in America. But I think that, J.D. Vance could have just nailed him on that, but he just let him hang himself, right? And that kind of rhetoric. Another technique he used, and we talked about this last night, you picked up on it, Tom, that I think multiple times J.D. got Tim Walz to agree with him. He would say something like, I think we can both agree. And Tim Walz would say, yeah, I do. And eventually, like, Pogo tweets out, he's like, wait, is Tim Walz voting for J.D. Vance? Because it sure sounds like. And that was, again, it was so effective, much more effective, I think, than the slash and burn approach that people on the left might have expected.
Let me say about the slash and burn. I mean,
there were times for it.
J.D. Vance shouldn't have done the slash and burn precisely because the initial media salvo campaign against him made him toxic for a lot of women. And so J.D. Vance really should not, and it was good that he did not do a slash and burn. He was just like, hey, very down to earth. He's the neighborly guy that they try to convince Walz is.
Yeah.
So that was important, but people need to understand. Again, it is now so resounding and obvious that the media is so slanted against conservative or pro-life or Republican people that there really is only two approaches you can take. You can do the Donald Trump, like, you're wrong, stupid, let me tell you about what's going on, and just say it.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can be like J.D. Vance, it's like, well, okay, first of all, I think the whole premise of your question is off, and here's why, but I'll still answer the question, even though you're full of crap, essentially, is what he's saying. He, again, masterful performance. The other 98% of Republicans are just ill-equipped. They're like the Mitt Romneys out there, and they're like, and they don't realize that the debate moderator is wearing the jersey of their opponent. Like, you need to wake up. And again, okay, so I just want to say this. Men have, I think, done a little bit better job recently of owning our kind of mistakes or whatever. Men can be kind of too cocky and too smug. And we got away with it in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s or whatever. And then women are like, kind of slow your roll here. Yeah, okay, that's true. But women are not immaculate except for the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Question mark?
Here's the thing. Those moderators, did you see that moment when Maggie Brennan muted the mics and how much fun she had? I mean, she was like elated.
Yeah.
She was the school monitor, like in the hall telling you can't run to class and you're late. It's like, okay, let's talk about this then. Men can have their excesses that are, in general, and make bloviate, talk too much, blah, 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 too cocky. I get it. But girl boss moments like that,
you ready?
Trash.
It came across. Let's just talk about the moderators for a minute then.
Wait, do you want to, let's just
play it. Let's play it for the people, right? Maybe you weren't up at 10 p.m. Don't blame you.
In suspense as he actually clicks the button.
Here we go.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own
Thank you, Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal process.
Kamala
We have so much to get
opened up
to,
that
Senator.
pathway.
Thank
No, but the clip.
Wait, what clip?
No, that's the first part.
No, here's my thought. Now, this is, Josh, the sentiment you're talking about here. JD Vance talking over two women for a good minute. What a man. Tweet from Julia Loft. Now, my hot take on this, I think that they intentionally manufactured this moment by choosing two female moderators, knowing when exactly they're going to step in and fact check so that they'd have the opportunity to cut the mic to make this kind of accusation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, having the two monitors, like the two female moderators. I say monitors because they remind me of hall monitors from when I was in school. I mean, they came across as like Miss Minchin from Little Princess, or I mean, what else? Miss Hannigan from Annie or something like that. And it was so stilted and awkward though, because they would like all through the debate, one of the men, Tim Walz or JD Vance, they would finish a sentence well within the time. And then the female monitor would be like, they finish their sentence, pause, you're out of time, Governor. And you're just like, what is this? Like, why? That's like, it was like scripted. You have to beat the men over the head at every opportunity. It's just what they decided to do.
Here, so that was the prelude to the clip. The actual clip, I just sent it to you in the Slack here. I really think you can see the utter joy, to use the term of the year, right? And the vibes that Margaret Brennan gets when she's able to say, ha ha, your mic's off.
Here we go.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
Should I just torture the chat?
Okay, girl bossing.
I could play this on loop for like 10 seconds. And
Yeah.
Everyone's had this happen to them, right? I mean, everyone's had kind of a passive-aggressive woman smiling and saying, thank you for explaining to me the legal process in which immigration works. And it's like, oh, man.
Why do you thanks for mansplaining, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, so you know what? Again, I like to say I'll own the mistakes that men have made and I have made sometimes of trying to talk over people or being too cocky or too smug. And that's a problem. But that is also a problem. I don't care.
Thanks, Josh. Apology accepted. No.
Yeah. Erica accepting the apology on behalf of all women. Awesome.
And I'll tell you, Erica, if you get girl bossy like that.
Boom. Hold me accountable, Josh. I do not want to end up like that. No.
Back on, and I think, Erica, you made this point. Essentially, the way that I thought about it was JD Vance came in with a mission in mind. And it really was apparent in his strategy, even in his dress. I don't know if you guys noticed he wore a pink tie. Now, typically when you see Republicans wearing a red tie, Democrats with blue ties, it became pretty obvious he was there to present a really
softer side of Sears.
Yeah, right. He was trying to present to women, essentially, who have been told that he's weird and called them cat ladies, that he hates them, a very affable, normal, well-spoken, polite, even image. And he wasn't there. There's a time, and it was funny, I was having this conversation. I always do these breakdowns with my wife after, and it's interesting to hear her perspective as someone that's really not as hard into the politics of it, but was still watching the VP debate. Supports my work. I appreciate it. And she had to say about it, she thinks that that kind of shot of civility that J.D. Vance came into and entered, even both men, Waltz as well, was so refreshing and something that she'd been craving. And I think it's really a credit to J.D. Vance for coming in and being very disciplined in doing that. I think there's a place, too, for what Trump had to do, because she's like, oh, man, I haven't felt that in 10 plus years, probably since the Obama days. And to me, I'm like, that's not a knock per se against Trump even, because I think he pointed out and he gave talking points to J.D. Vance that he would not have been able to use 10 years ago pre-Trump. Like, we all basically understand now how biased the media is. Fake news has become pretty synonymous.
So your Midwestern wife likes it when two Midwestern people debate civilly.
Yeah.
Now, incidentally, the people on the national stage that are not like the Midwesterners, right? Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and Kamala Harris are all of the sort of smash mouth.
Yeah.
You know, and what happened when you had someone who smash mouth, you know, a coastal against a Midwesterner? Well, it was Joe Biden versus Paul Ryan in the VP debate. And Paul Ryan was hoping to have a candidate like Tim Walz who would debate civilly, and you get Joe Biden who interrupted him like mad craziness. And so, again, you need to understand. I mean, like, here, the only thing I would say for J.D. Vance is like, this worked because you had a Midwesterner. Also worked because the guy you're in a debate against was a total idiot. But if J.D. Vance runs for president in 2028, which I assume he will, in both your primary and your general election, you may not have a Midwesterner that's on the other side of the stage. You might have a smash mouth guy. So you got to be, you know, conversant in both, I guess, both tactics. You got to know.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think J.D. Vance is. I mean, he has been in
His
that
natural
kind
disposition, you're saying.
Yeah, he's a bulldog, and I think that was why last night. Sure, he's from the Midwest, but he's also like a Yale-educated lawyer, and we've seen him on hostile media interviews over and over again for the last 2 months, where he is like, he'll just come out swinging if it's appropriate, even give it whoever the person, you know, attacking him is, he'll come out swinging.
He's high in courage.
Yeah, he's very high in courage, and he is very quick-witted, and he can come back at it. And I think that made last night all the more impressive because he read his opponent, he read the moderators, he read what America needed last night, and he nailed it.
I mean, I guess my point would be, do you think Donald Trump would do better with voters in Michigan and Wisconsin if he just adjusted his tone a little bit more towards J.D. Vance?
Given that he has debated so far this cycle, a walking corpse, Joe Biden, and a absolute shell of a politician in Kamala Harris, it's hard to say. I mean, he could not
just a debate, though. I mean, there's probably not going to be another debate. I'm just saying, like, press conferences, talking to the media, you know, talking to voters. Do you think he could adjust his tone a little bit more towards JD and be more effective?
Now, here's the distinction that needs to be made, and I think about this in the context of that debate as well. I almost sounded like Kamala Harris there. In the context of all the things. Donald Trump is much more captivating at rallies. Even the clips I've seen of J.D. Vance at rallies, he does look a little bit out of his element. And I think that actually is because he is an attorney and he's well-spoken, and it takes a certain – it's like WWE or Vince McMahon. Like, those guys are entertainers, right? They get out and they get a crowd going.
Trump is natural at that.
He is an entertainer.
Right. Trump is very good at that. And that's why I think –
generational talent.
Right. And you get the good 1-2 punch of Trump, and then you bring in Vance to take on hostile interviews, to be able to go into debates. I think it's a mark of a good litigator, a good person at persuasion, to be able to change strategy based on the situation you're in. And JD, I believe, not only is intelligent enough, but disciplined enough to do so. He came into that moment prepared, and he did it. I don't think while Trump has generational charisma, can get a crowd going like nobody else, I don't think he has it in him at this point to
To make
change.
it.
It's going to be me. So
I will say this: there's a lot of online guys back in July who thought Donald Trump totally screwed up by putting J.D. Vance as his running mate, and boy, was Donald Trump vindicated. To have and what was the biggest knock that the left has on Donald Trump? He's a super proud, egotistical man who would never admit he made any mistakes. Well, here he is saying, I'm going to pick as my running mate a guy who attacked the hell out of me in 2016 and was attacking me for years after that, and then finally figured out I was right all along. And there's a lot of people saying he was not with us. He was never with us on day one. You can't trust him. And he gets out there and he killed it yesterday. He did great in that debate. Fantastic.
Sweet. Someone gave me credit for my pronunciation of McMahon. Irish pronunciation. I'll take it. I always pronounce words wrong. So that was general vibes, I think. And I have a few moments that I wanted to bring up. And some of these might be kind of intra-party. I don't know how much impact they'll have, but a couple of the highlights. I think one thing that I just think was so smart and needed to be done more in the previous debates was this. This was the main attack line for J.D. Vance, and I think it resonated. It was on his question on Iran. It came up, and it came out multiple times throughout the night. Here it is.
Iran's
And important to bring this up because I remember in the last debate, it wasn't there, and it almost let Kamala Harris kind of be.
Just we did not hear the clip, so I don't know if the audience did or not.
I apologize. That's on me, gang. All right, here we go.
And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure.
Yeah, 100%. And he made the point later on that he goes, I'm 40 years old. Think back over my lifetime. Who is the only president who has not gotten us up in another major conflagration and war in the world? And that would be the 4 years Donald Trump was in office. So he came back to that again and again. And that was so smart to point that out because no one's hearing that from the mainstream media for sure.
Right.
And again, I mean, like Tim Walz, I mean, J.D. Vance alluded to it. He's got a tough job to do out there. He's got to mop up after, I'm getting the echo now. Are you getting the echo?
No.
He has to mop up after, 3.5 years of the Biden-Harris administration doing everything crappy. So he's got to get out there and spit polish a turd. And the fact is, he just does absolute whoppers. Here's the thing when it comes to politics. You sort of expect politicians to take bad information and give it the nicest possible light and, put their spin on it and, maybe embellish things or exaggerate things. I mean, that's sort of like understood. And Donald Trump obviously does this in spades. And people are like, well, he doesn't tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And yeah, duh, politicians. However, Tim Walz his lies are amazing.
It was stunning.
He said crossings are down. Illegal crossings are down to when Trump left office. I mean, this is so obviously 100% totally false. I mean, it's not even close. What?
Josh, I got one for you. Probably my favorite part of the night. And when we were covering it live, I had people texting me laughing at us reacting to this because we had our mics muted, but all of us just kind of threw up our hands. I was doing the Jonah Hill cut him off. It was when Tim Walz was asked about China, and I do have that clip here. It's worth watching its entirety. I mean, just
the Great Walls of China.
Here we go.
You said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill. to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect, and I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot, I will get caught up in the rhetoric, but being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID, and I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community, and then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this, so I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what.
Yeah, actually, I actually am not as upset and angry about this as other people are, like in terms of his whoppers, like to me, the bigger whopper was that he said he was in a combat area when he was just on an Air Force base in Italy, which is okay. Like, I'm not denigrating people who maybe when we have wars going on and we have people in combat zones, we respect them as being in the most dangerous areas. That's not to say it's a picnic when you're at an Air Force base in Italy, but it's not as hot as a combat zone. That to me is a bigger deal. I mean, that he bragged a little bit. It's just like Joe Biden. Oh, I was top of my class in law school. Like, nah, you're in the bottom like 10%, bro. They're serial liars. And if they lie about this, they lie about other things, I suppose. But at the end of the day, the lie that matters most to me is like, oh, crossings are down now. It's like,
hey, Josh, have you been to another foreign country 30 times?
I have not. He has a love affair with
China. I literally, I can't.
That's where his wife and he went on their honeymoon.
It's a lot of trips.
Who's been to a country in Asia from America 30 times? I can't even think of that. I know
it was for the kids, Tom. It was for the kids. He just wanted to bring young people over.
I'm still convinced. I mean, I know it's not proven yet, but I think he gave intel to the Chinese.
No doubt. And the FBI has information they're withholding from us intentionally. They held it from the House Judiciary Committee. So,
yeah, I think this clip, though, this particular moment, it was the most awkward moment for him personally, and I think it's the moment that probably Nancy Pelosi started contemplating, maybe I need to call up Tim Walz and tell him he's done. But because it was so obvious that he was a liar, it exposed his habitual lying and that he did not have any. So it wasn't the worst of the lies. Like maybe
it's just that he finally got caught.
It's just that he finally got caught. The moderator actually came back at him and followed up and pushed it and didn't just give it the softball treatment. So
Walt on the second go. That was the thing. Like, yeah, you know what? I was wrong. I was not there at that exact time. I was there 2 months later.
Yeah.
And I apologize.
It puts the people voting for him in, like, maybe my prayer is that moment put a check on it for them. And they're like, oh, maybe like he's trying to pass us off. His whole thing is like, I'm just a knucklehead. I'm just the doofy dad next door. I'm not responsible for that. That it was so repulsive the way that he did it, that hopefully it was one of those masks off moments that give pause to somebody who's watching maybe as an independent who still has an ounce of integrity left. And they're like, oh, maybe.
My hot take, no. I don't think that that moment in particular changed anything, because people point out all the same things about Trump and people aren't going to change for that. I think, if anything, the biggest takeaway from the night for me, and I do want to get into the abortion clip, which I know there's a lot to think about, it was a shot of almost inspiration, I think, for a lot of beleaguered conservatives and Republicans to see someone go on stage and put on that articulate, calm of a performance. It was just a morale booster, I think,
Yeah, definitely for me.
rather than we convinced independents or we convinced Democrats. I don't think so. I think they are just as fine with the Democrat performance. I don't think they think he won. I think he did good enough of getting the message across.
Okay.
Bigger for Republicans.
I think it's not just that, though. I agree with that it performed that service. But the second thing, I'm going to go ahead and agree with Steve Deese. He's got his own show, and he put out his point in the debate recap coverage. He said, there are still people who are sympathetic to our side and our ideas, but they just feel like Trump is just a little too reckless, and a little bit kind of chaos candidate and stuff like that. I mean, people in general want change, but J.D. Vance was able to articulate, actually, you need Trump's disruptiveness. You want normal? If you crave normal, you need to send Donald Trump to Washington, D.C. to fix things. Mm-hmm. You need that guy to get in there and shake it up, because Washington, D.C. has declared war on normal, has declared war on men and women, boys and girls, has declared war on our cheap energy and a normal American dream economy. So if you crave normal, send the disruptive Donald Trump to Washington to kick their butts. It's the Beltway that's comfortable and soft and normal, and they're sticking it to us. So J.D. Vance is able to articulate that, I think, in so much more clear ways. It's like, look, you want to go back in time to where America wasn't at each other's throat, wasn't hyperpartisan, all that kind of stuff, then we need to remove the people in power that are dividing us, and that is the left. Kamala Harris believes that disaster relief formula money, like what we have in the hurricane, should be targeted first to people based on their race. And you tell this to people, and they're like, no, she doesn't. That's crazy. I'm like, yes, she does.
She literally said it.
It is Marxist DEI stuff for these people. They want to divide us. So if you want unity, if you want a better America that's more civil, then ironically enough, you need that disruptive candidate, because the one people that Donald Trump is scaring the most and making, is the actual Beltway people who are super comfortable. Every city in America that's dealing with high grocery prices and all the difficulties, Washington, D.C. is recession proof. They don't care about you. They're just fine. When everywhere else in the country is hurting, there are construction cranes building after building after building in D.C. They're comfortable, and they don't like Donald Trump because they're going to upset the apple cart. Well, that's what we need.
Okay, so now this is a Catholic program. I think the one moment of the night that had a lot of Catholics talking was his answer, J.D. Vance's answer on abortion. I think Tim Walz was pretty much what everyone expected, but this was probably the first time I've heard this specific argument from a Republican articulated, and it especially means more because J.D. Vance is Catholic. So I'm just going to play the clip. We can get into some of the reactions afterwards. I want to hear your guys' thoughts.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Senator, do you?
Yeah, this was great. And I got a wicked echo. Am I okay?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know.
All right. Yeah, this was the way to go from, and we talk about this here, after Dobbs dropped and Roe v. Wade was overturned, we had a wake-up call, right? We had a wake-up call, and it became evident through votes in Ohio, in Kansas, et cetera, that the 50 years of the total abortion regime that Roe was had twisted our country's understanding of the pro-life cause so much that people are unwilling to contemplate what's being pitched as abortion bans, right? That they're willing to vote in amendments to their state constitutions that have no restriction on abortion, that remove parental rights and religious conscience protection clauses. This is where we are as a country. And that's what JD is saying here. He says we have to rebuild trust. And that's what we talk about here. We need to rebuild our American culture, which suffered 50 years of a wasteland of Roe v. Wade, of KCV Planned Parenthood. That's where we are, and we have to start from there. I do want to talk about one reaction that came out of this, and I think you have it pulled up here. Lila Rose, who I admire, she is a hero. No one has done more than Lila Rose to expose the evil of Planned Parenthood. Maybe David Daleiden, but Lila has just done so much for the unborn. She started tweeting at this point, JD, stop. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. You're throwing babies under the bus. And I just think this reaction is exactly what JD is talking about. There is nothing in his answer that threw any babies under the bus. His answer was saying, we need to build a culture of life because we don't have one right now. There is no place where we can just go in there and say, okay, we're going to say no abortions nationwide, all the way up through 40 weeks. We are not there. We want to get there. We want a culture where abortion is unthinkable, but we also have to exercise our prudence and say, the American people are not with us. We're going to rebuild trust, a pro-family culture. And from there, politics is downstream of culture, 100% JD.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, we have our Bill of Rights, right? The freedom of speech guaranteed to us in the Constitution, right to religious liberty, and the Second Amendment. Of course, the Democrats have no problem going after all of those constitutional rights. They're not supposed to be up for debate. They're not supposed to be up for majority vote at all. And so the left decided, this process of because they passed constitutional amendments during the progressive era to allow them to do the income tax, to make alcohol illegal. And they're like, this is a lot of work to do a constitutional amendment like this. Maybe we should just shift strategies and get the Supreme Court to declare it a constitutional right. And then we don't have to go through this messy process of convincing our fellow citizens that it's a constitutional right. So they do it, and they get it into law from Roe v. Wade and establish a brand new constitutional right that no longer states would have the people would no longer have any say in this matter through their elected representatives. They treated it as sacred, in fact, more sacred than our constitutional rights, because Kamala Harris doesn't believe that we have the right to free speech, and she loves abortion. And she wants it to be the most, if they could have right now, just drives me crazy how sacred they consider abortion. But the fact of the matter is, we finally, after 50 years, 49, won the right to actually allow it to go to the democratic process again. And by the way, we're underfunded, and we're our best.
You're David.
And when people say, well, pro-lifers weren't really ready for this. Oh, great. Thanks a lot, guys. We were fighting for this for 50 years with, dimes and nickels. We're doing our best, thank you very much, and had no institutional support, nothing from the media, nothing from universities, nothing from entertainment. It was all, oh, it sounds like you guys focus too much on political. Yeah, let me just try to buy CBS, and let me just try to buy, MGM Studios. No. The thing is, we had to wrestle and fight to win over one of the parties, major parties, in favor of life. And that was a fight. I remember the 90s when they wanted to shove down some pro aborts. Even George W. Bush was flirting with Tom Ridge to get him to be the running mate. He was pro abortion. We had to fight like hell every time on that. But just because we won the one party over to life doesn't mean we have 50% of the American people on our side. It means we have the majority of one of them big parties. And this is what I think people forget. So about 90% of Republican elected officials are pro-life on paper, at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
They represent congressional districts or states that are pro-life. So the senator from Idaho, sure, he'll vote pro-life. Yeah, duh. Or the congressman from from Wyoming or whatever, sure. But that doesn't mean that all the Republican voters are pro-life. And so when it comes up in Ohio, we're like, well, obviously we'll win here because every Republican is pro-life. Check your assumptions. That's not true. There are people that are going to cast a ballot in Florida for Donald Trump, and they're going to also vote for abortion. It drives me crazy. It's sad, but you got to accept reality, and you got to work harder to try to convince Americans to come your way on this.
Yeah, I really appreciated a lot about his answer. I guess I'm looking at the current landscape and just trying to call things for what they are. I do think the Lila Roses and the pro-life groups of the world, single issue groups of the world, they have to say this. I guess I didn't expect them to.
Some have to.
Some have to. I think they have to say this. And as a Catholic, I believe that abortion is murder. I believe that every unborn, preborn baby is a baby. And I think it has intrinsic value as a human being. That being said,
I wish IVF were illegal.
Right. I wish IVF was legal, gay marriage. Like, I actually believe in the Catholic teaching, all of this. Like, my thoughts, I'm in the 1% of the country, probably, right? I mean, even among Catholics, there's not even consensus, which is crazy. Of course, there's consensus among teaching. So the acknowledgments of where we are and humanizing it and saying I think everyone knows of someone or knows someone personally that has been in a position where they felt pressured to have an abortion or they felt pressure to do something like that. He brings up that example. Some people are seeing that as like losing some type of moral legitimacy. I don't. I see that as acknowledging where we are right now. I think if we drop a federal abortion ban, period, on our country, I don't even think it would be good for the country, period. They're not ready to handle it. The culture is not where it needs to be. People are not.
Well, the federal abortion ban is such a stupid question anyway.
Right. And it's not going to happen politically, but if I could finish, I like the voices of the JD Vances, the people that are trying to move the football, are trying to, if nothing else, allow mothers more options, work towards that. I think it's a much more positive vision than the language of bans. I think it's going to be much more appealing to the middle because, unfortunately, I think what happens with a lot of pro-life advocacy is, you see the aborted babies, you see the angry messages, you see the ban language. And just to someone who's just a normal American, probably has milquetoast views, that's not appealing to them. And it's what they painted JD Vance to be. And he completely shattered the media perception of who JD Vance is. He did it in this question. He did it throughout the rest of the debate. And I think it's a real path forward of, hey, I'm here to earn back the trust. I'm trying to offer American families the most options possible. Option not being killing your child, but in order to build and grow a family, we want to offer people the American dream. And you start there and then you start moving towards the middle. And I don't think anything he said, another smart political thing about this answer, I think, is he didn't say anything that is going to anger hardline pro-lifers enough to make them not vote for him. I just don't think that he did.
Enough of them.
Enough. I don't think he did. And yes, I think he wins people in the middle with this answer. And I think it makes it moves the conversation forward instead of stuck in the trenches, the World War I trenches of ban language. We clearly are not winning on that. It's not winning on a state level. It's not winning on a federal level. So let's come up with some solutions. Let's move forward. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. Just two notes. I think when you say things like, Kristen Hawkins, well, actually, Kristen Hawkins was very supportive of JD, but like Lila Rose, that they have to say the things that they say. I agree that she is in a role where she is pushing for, there is no abortion anywhere, total we're looking at like massive restrictions, if not total bans. That's what we're pushing for. Like she holds up the eventual goal, the ideal, for sure. What I think is not helpful, though, is that here we are in a very contentious election, and to choose this moment right now to basically like make that argument like we can't vote for you if you're going to do this, that could be damaging because it's going to dampen enthusiasm for voters, and it could actually have an effect on the outcome.
Well, my biggest concern with that is I think it's a risky proposition to say we're going to hold back, if pro-lifers say we're going to hold back our vote and then allow you to lose and then try to do better in 4 years. First of all,
there might not be
another 4 years from now at the rate we're going with illegal immigration. I honestly, we're near the end of Republic kind of stage of stuff, number one. But I do think just in general, pro-lifers should really consider, I consider myself obviously one of them, what J.D. Vance is trying to do here is to try to paint a bigger picture of the kind of cultural rot that we face ourselves with, as you're saying, Tom, give people more choices, but also something very rare amongst politicians. Ironically enough, this comes from both Trump and Vance, having a kind of almost a humility here to say, this is what I think and I believe, and I know that so many people probably don't agree with me, so I'm going to try my best to win you over to my cause and be a little bit humble about it. That is a very rare quality in politicians, and it's very surprising that Trump is actually 100%. One of them. But Trump's instincts on this are right, because the numbers on here, people are so very emotional on this issue that you need to kind of wait a little bit and give them a little, give them opportunities to understand this. You got to build, again, I said this a year ago on the LOOPCast. I love Ron DeSantis. He's my favorite guy. And it took forever to get rid of those dinosaur communists on the Florida Supreme Court, and they finally got rid of them. And the legislature there after Dobbs was like, this is awesome. We can pass a new law protecting unborn children after 15 weeks. And they did it. And then DeSantis a year later is like, I'm going to go for broke. I'm going to go for a heartbeat, which is basically like close to 6 weeks. And I thought, man, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. I'm so happy for you doing this. I did say, though, there's a chance that could actually cost you the presidency, and maybe it's still worth it. Maybe it's still worth doing. But the problem is it could cause a backlash. And now we're seeing that in Florida, where pro-lifers need to get just 41% of the vote, because the pro-aborts have to get 60% of Floridians to vote for this pro-abortion amendment. And they might do it. Yeah. That's the concern I have. Because my point is, just because you have the ability to enact the most super pro-life law, you got to watch your step and make sure if you go, quote, too far, if the people think you've gone too far, then you run the risk of them doing a ballot initiative and wiping away everything you have. So again, that's why I say, like, we're talking about human babies that are being killed. I get it. It's a tragedy. And so we want to try to do what we can to save the most number of kids, but we don't want to do something that would cause a backlash. And,
just a final note too, not necessarily on abortion, but this came up with J.D. Vance when we were talking about options. One part I appreciated in a way that it was unexpected how refreshing it was to me. He gets up, and when they're talking about a family policy, paid leave, daycare, he talked about his wife, and he said, my wife is a very successful, beautiful attorney, and I really admire and I'm proud of her. And we still have 2 kids and we want to live our life. And he said, I want to provide families with the most amount of options to build the kind of families that they want, live the kind of lives they want to live. And it was refreshing in that I think maybe it's just being online too much or just seeing how these debates play out. People kind of get in like the World War I trenches that I'm talking about. And even like, every woman has to stay at home, or every woman has to do this, or the feminist version is every woman has to be equal and man, they need to be in the corporate world. It was kind of nice just to hear him kind of cordially be like, I want Americans to be able to live out the American dream, give them the most options possible, allow them to build families and be prosperous. That's my goal here. And it was kind of like, oh, everyone can kind of agree with that. It didn't feel like
even Walz did.
Exactly. Walz agreed with a lot of it.
He sure did.
I just think maybe the biggest takeaway from this debate is Vance 2028 stock is high. That was presidential performance.
Yep.
from JD Vance. He spoke in a way that made me see him as a potential future of the Republican Party, which is so exciting to me because even the things he was talking about in terms of family policy, leave, he was speaking about things that as a young dad I think about and I'm concerned about that actually matter to me. And it's probably the first time a Republican, and I think a lot of this is due to his age and also his populism and his faith, because he talked a lot about Catholic social teaching, either directly or indirectly.
Indirectly.
And the Tim Scotts, the Lindsey Grahams, like the people just talking about tax cuts and bombs. Like it was so nice to have people to be able to speak on things that actually matter to me. I'm like, I think that's powerful.
And just get one last thing on the national abortion ban. It just drives me crazy when people focus on that. That has about as much possibility happening in the next 2 years as the Tigers do of calling me up to play against Houston tonight. I mean, it's just not happening, people. Why are we getting the hypotheticals? It's just not. You're not going to get it past the Senate next year. Not happening.
I want to give Erica the opportunity. Do you have any final thoughts before I get into memes?
No, I think that what you were saying about just speaking, his populism allows him to do it. I did have one final thought, something I noticed. JD Vance never directly talked about his own faith being Catholic, or he never quoted the Bible and all that. He was very approachable, classical thought, like it was social justice teaching, but it was just couched as this is what's good for Americans and families. The one who actually brought up Christian language was Tim Walz. He mentioned midnight mass. He was raised Catholic. Yeah. Lord have mercy on his soul. He mentioned midnight mass, and then he quoted Matthew 25 to us about the least of these and blah, blah, blah. So I'm kind of waiting for all the Christian nationalist radars to start going off, because I'm getting nervous about Walz and his true intentions here, but don't think we'll see any of that.
Christian nationalism alert.
Woo, Tim Walz.
All right, I did promise memes in the title. Don't worry, I delivered.
Okay.
So today,
bring the memes.
JD Vance meme that will probably long outlive this debate. We get every time Tim Walz says something kind of dumb, we get the Jim from The Office breaking the fourth wall. Just an incredible moment from, and there's a couple of like a side by side too. I can find. So you get him looking there, and I've already seen that used everywhere. And I'm like, is that potentially the most valuable outcome of the debate? My other personal favorite was, the Wolf of Pennsylvania Avenue, as I call her, Nancy Pelosi. Sell Waltz, buy Vance. Right after the China conversation.
That one's awesome. Oh.
That was pretty solid.
Oh, someone in the chat did say, Vance did say Christ have mercy at one point.
You did. It was the
I
school
did
shootings
miss that one. Yep.
Speaking of school shootings, this talk about the difference between two different campaigns here. Or, I mean, it's the same campaign, two different people. We get Trump Vance 2024, not friends with school shooters. Truth out by Donald Trump. There was a moment in the debate where Tim Walz, clearly nervous, said that he was friends with school shooters, which was a pretty crazy slip up. I do think it was an honest slip up. But
yeah, obviously, I don't.
People pounced on that one.
He's a knucklehead.
Yeah, he's a knucklehead. And do I have any more? I mean, there's a couple other. Him playing whack-a-mole, that was good.
Oh, I want to see that last one. The VP Dumber Than Me. What's that one?
Oh, yeah, that one's fun. So this one is a little bit of a chain here. We have, again, truth out by Donald Trump. I need a VP dumber than me. It's Obama. I need a VP dumber than me. It's Biden. I need a VP dumber than me. Kamala Harris. And then you get Tim Walz at the bottom.
Deer in headlights.
So, man. Yeah, plenty of memes from this one. I think the other one that I personally related to, I said, well, first off, the only thing that can happen is the fly. The fly was absent at the debate. No fly landing on anyone's head like he did on Mike Pence. And then this one was pretty great. I've seen this one used a lot as me make this mess, my toddler, and it's deer in headlights here from Walt. So, yeah.
I sent you a meme there you can put on.
Oh, you sent me a meme?
And then
wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's good. Here, we'll put it up. This is a good.
Sure.
And
that's all, folks.
Josh, you want to put on a little dance number for us? A little song and dance number?
Well, it makes sense because he looks like Elmer. His opponent looks like Elmer Fudd. Knucklehead.
True.
Bugs Bunny, JD Vance. Like, can you believe this?
So I think worth bringing up briefly before we go into the Twilight Zone. So Iran has launched an unprecedented rocket attack on Israel. And what's funny, even before the debate, we were like, are they going to bring up any major issues, like tough issues? And the first three things they talked about, to their credit, Iran, first one, second one being the hurricane. I'm getting a thumbs up there. And then, well, climate change was the third question. I forgot about the climate change answer. Although this is almost Twilight Zone. Apparently, this is, again, unprecedented. A Republican just won the consensus on climate change. Who made better arguments about how to handle climate change? We get 9 people for Waltz and 13 people for Vance.
That's amazing.
Pretty crazy.
It's not
Wait,
actually. It's not too crazy because
let me read this off real quick, just for the audience. Vance said the best way to address climate change was to invest in manufacturing jobs in the U.S. Waltz argued that America should invest in clean energy technologies and take steps to reduce carbon emissions. There you have it. Go ahead.
it's a winnable debate if you just actually fight, and J.D. Vance did it. That's good.
Yeah.
And actually, environmentalists are all the villains in the movies because they want to make your life miserable.
Thanos is the OG environmentalist.
That's right.
Take out half the world. But yeah, so you get that Iran strike, and then we get a response from. I'm really, obviously, pray for the Middle East. We're sending soldiers over there. It's going to get crazier. I don't see any way that it doesn't. But we get a shocking reason why they decided to move. Here we go.
What's the message to Iran?
Don't.
As President Biden said, just don't.
Exactly. One word. Pretty straightforward.
Wow, that is some serious foreign policy going on.
And then we get
How'd that work
KJP
out?
trotting up to the podium and saying, well, we didn't lift any sanctions on Iran.
Oh my gosh.
Which, one Google search away in July, $10 billion unfrozen for Iran to use on whatever. They said they can only use it on certain things. It looks like they used it on missiles that they just sent over to.
Just a bald-faced lying. It was exacerbated by the fact that she insists on dressing like that guy from Hunger Games, who's like she's got like this outfit on, and she's like, "We never lifted sanctions," and you're like, "You lifted $10 billion."
I forget the name of that person. It's not President Snow.
No, it's the announcer dude. Oh man.
Oh, Sinha?
Sorry.
Dang.
Hunger Games. I
Gotta
know.
hit a quick Google search on the Hunger Games knowledge.
Yeah, here I go. Oh, Claudius.
I would not win Hunger Games.
Hunger Games
question.
trivia. That's the only trivia we can get Josh on.
Yeah.
We're up 3 years, dude.
Pop
Hunger Games
culture
are
is
actually
my
really
blind
good.
spot
I
there.
think they're pro-life.
Not to go all nostalgia.
Hot take.
That was one of the hottest movies of my teen years. I remember everyone went to go see that in theaters. I want to say I saw that in like 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
Jennifer Lawrence's politics are atrocious.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
But she is actually kind of funny when she does the man on the street and asking people, "Do you know who Jennifer Lawrence is?" And they're like, "I have no idea."
Yeah,
who that
that's
is."
actually really funny.
It's actually kind of funny.
I do love those. Okay, so we got Twilight Zone now. Let's do. Josh, do you have one?
I do actually. So I mean, I want to talk about something, and I do this at risk of not knowing the entire situation. But there is an activist by the name of Corey DeAngelis who's been absolutely phenomenal on spreading school choice. He is one of the greatest advocates for school choice that we have out there. And he's been working with a group called the American Federation for Children. He got fired from that job, and I'd like to know more about what happened, but he admitted that something that happened when he was younger, that he was in an adult video. And he repented of it and said, I made mistakes and moved on from it. My concern here is obviously I don't condone pornography, certainly not gay pornography. The man came clean. He's now in good graces. He's repented. He's married to a wonderful lady. They have a child. I would love to know more about the story because it seems like you're allowing this, I would really hate that it would be the case that a conservative organization would abandon a really good rock star warrior for a great cause simply because a bunch of LGBT activists found dirt on him and used it to blackmail him, and the organization cut ties because of it. I mean, if there's something that was done illegally, I guess it's a different question. But I think we have to understand ourselves. We revere people who left horrible lifestyles and had a conversion in their heart. Like, Mary Magdalene is considered one of the greatest saints in the Catholic tradition. And even your interview Erica, with Bree Solstad, if I say her name right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my heart goes out to her. What a courageous woman to walk away from that lifestyle. It would be really silly to say, "Oh, we're going to fire you because you were once doing horrible things." It's like, we're glad you're no longer doing horrible things. You're now part of the resistance against this nasty sexual revolution, and you're actually fighting for school choice. Corey is fighting for school choice. I can't think of a single person that has advanced the school choice agenda more than he has. And I just want to commend him. If there's something out there that I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
I guess. But from everything I see, why would you allow? I mean, the teachers' unions are smiling because of this. And
They're thrilled.
I just don't get this.
Early guest on the podcast too. Actually, he's one of our first interviews.
So, when something like this happens to somebody who's a really good person, a really good hero, I want to put down my name as being in favor of Corey. Corey, I shout out to you. I love all the great work you've done, and I stand shoulder to shoulder with you. So,
yeah,
and I think.
Go ahead, Erica.
Yeah, no, I think it's evidence that the secular religion has no mercy, right? We belong to the faith that is grounded in the mercy of God. And if we don't really believe in the possibility of someone like Bree or someone like Corey, again, we don't know all the details of the Corey situation, but if we don't believe in the possibility of redemption from the worst of sins, I mean, there's no hope for me either.
It's Christ. He is the Redeemer.
Right.
Let's, Erica, you can finish.
No. That was it.
There's another example of this. Josh is a streamer named Sketch, and he got really popular, just kind of a positive influence. And then stuff came out about his past. He was doing online pornography again, kind of unfortunate. And then has this big conversion to Jesus, and then blows up in popularity after all of this. And I think one of the kind of pernicious lies about all this is simultaneously people are told that sex means nothing. Sex work is work. Do whatever you want with your body. It's your choice, whatever. But then as soon as you do something, you get successful, it's used as a bludgeon against you. It's a real form of slavery and hypocrisy. And because, of course, the initial lie is you can do whatever you want with your body and there's no consequences, which is not true. But then they use it when it's convenient to try to tear someone down.
Yeah, he went against the family. He went against the sexual revolution. So now they're using it against him.
Exactly. And I think Sketch is a good example of someone that it feels like that doesn't work as much anymore because maybe it's, I guess, really the possibility of it even happening and being used against you. Part of that is the internet. But then also the internet kind of allows people to see your true character. You can see your body of work. And so especially these live streamers, you see him all the time. He's just kind of universally beloved, and people are like, hey, he made mistakes in his past and he's owned up to them. He was very direct about it, and he wants to move on, and he wants to continue doing what he's doing and be a good influence. And that seems like the case here. Of course, if anything illegal happened, hopefully justice is done. But if you made mistakes, you make mistakes, you move on. There's no forgiveness in secular circles, really. You're just completely trapped. So yeah,
Right.
pray for Corey. I mean, that I can't even imagine having to go through that. It must just be a nightmare to your wife and your family and everything like that too. So pray for Corey. Thanks for bringing that up, Josh. Erica.
All right. I wanted to do a little palate cleanser here, and this actually tracks exactly with Josh's selection today. So it's October. It's the month of the Holy Rosary. As Catholics, we have no greater weapon. Totally going to weaponize that rosary this month. So I'd encourage you all to dive deeper into the rosary. If you haven't been saying the whole thing, just pick up a decade. If you can't do the whole thing, just maybe commit every day this month, especially leading up to the election, of praying for Our Lady to bring us victory. But I wanted to bring up my absolute favorite rosary saint today, and his name is Bartolo Longo. What a great name.
him.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. Isn't this a great story? So talk about being in the depths, right? So he in his 20s, he grew up in the Catholic faith in Italy, but in his 20s, he left the faith. He became not only an atheist, but a Satanist priest. He was like, this was the blackest of the black. And eventually he gets plunged into this dark, dark depression. He's wandering around. He finds this Dominican priest who agrees to, he says, you should really confess. It's going to save you. And so he confesses to this priest, and he receives absolution. the priest, he becomes devoted to the rosary through the influence of the Dominicans. Of course, Our Lady gave the rosary to Saint Dominic in the 9th century. And he goes on to become this massive evangelist. But I love his story, not only because he helps resurrect a shrine in Pompeii, and I love the stories of Pompeii and the mountain exploding and everything. This is like Our Lady is the actual powerhouse in Pompeii. Forget Vesuvius. And I got to go there once. It was an amazing experience. So Bartolo Longo, he ends up, he's one of the sort of patrons. We're waiting for his canonization, but he's one of the patrons of mental health crisis. And I think that what this election has shown, and we spent a lot of time online, and JD Vance brought it up last night, that our country is in a mental health epidemic. I mean, rates of anxiety and depression, especially among women, but suicidal tendencies actually spiking more among young men. And this is a time when we really need the intercession of Bartolo Longo. So I would encourage everyone to go Google him, look him up. He's also in this great rosary book. I'm going to plug it for October. Champions of the Rosary by Father Donald Calloway.
I'm going to see him in a couple weeks.
Yeah, you're going to see Father Donald?
He's
That's
coming
awesome.
up to the Marian Conference up in Northern Michigan, and we love Bartolo Longo because, in fact,
There he is.
And he has a sweet stash.
Sweet stash.
Oh yeah, he's a handsome fellow.
Coco's getting ideas. Yeah.
Fired up, maybe.
My mother-in-law, Barbara Jean Smith, who started the Marian Conferences up here in Northern Michigan, was born into eternal life on the feast day of Bartolo Longo. So we love him. We celebrate him in our family for sure.
Close to the heart. So propagate that rosary and say the rosary. It's going to be great. Everything will be okay.
So mine is a narrative as usual. Okay, so in preparing some of the show or previous shows, an article got shared around, and I don't want Josh to get any ideas, but I saw this. Bosses are firing Gen Z grads just months after hiring them. Here's what they say needs to change. Josh, close your ears.
I refuse to ignore this.
I am in Gen Z. So after complaining for the better part of 2 years that Gen Z grads are difficult to work with, bosses are no longer all talk, no action. Now they are rapidly firing young workers who aren't up to scratch just months after hiring them. 6 in 10 employers say they have already sacked some of their Gen Z workers they hired fresh out of college earlier this year. Gen Z grads unprepared and unprofessional. Hiring managers, let's see, 20% can't handle the workload. 50% of leaders cited say that the reason why things didn't work out was lack of motivation or initiative.
Mm-hmm.
Gen Z being unprofessional, unorganized, and having poor communication skills, top reasons. So I saw this, and Michigan State, of course, came up. But unfortunately, I saw another article, and I was like, I feel like these two can't be connected, right? So here's an article from The Atlantic. At elite colleges like Columbia, many students are showing up unprepared to read full books. It's not the middle and high schools have stopped teaching them how. And I can't help but think like these two things are related. And of course, you get the very top level argument that social media has just obliterated people's attention spans. And I really one day think we'll look back on giving phones to young kids the same way we look at.
Okay, but wait a minute now.
Josh, I'm speaking.
I don't care. No, I mean, having served on the school board of a Chesterton Academy, I can tell you the young kids, there are young kids who know how to read books and are smarter than I was when I was in high school because of it. So I don't disagree that the Ivies have too many of these kids with short attention spans, but there are a whole host there's a renaissance of Catholic education between homeschooling, like Erica does so much to help out with that. And then also the Chesterton Academy is another good classical education school. So no, I think, and you know what? They're not going to the Ivies. They're going to places like Christendom College and Hillsdale and University of Mary and Benedictine College and Ave Maria, which is the UMary of the South. So I mean, it's a renaissance in education.
Shout out! We had a business professor reach out from CUA.
Yeah,
the Bush School there is awesome.
University grade school. I'll be happy to say we accept all merchandise shamelessly, but I'll be in touch soon. But it's cool to hear who listens to the show. But yes, I agree with that, Josh. But I think if you look at a broader trend of where we've gone with these books, there's the obvious point made, as I said, about social media ruining attention spans. But there's other things that they dug deeper in this article about that I think are interesting as well. Grade inflation is insane, especially at the college level.
Yeah.
I think they said like 80% of Harvard students are getting A's. Like, how's that
Yeah.
possible? Also, Common Core. The point of Common Core was basically to, and I'd love to get Jeremy in on this because he's the expert, but to take small passages from larger works and teach that instead of teaching an entire book. And
Right.
I agree that overall education standards are down.
yeah,
I mean,
I just want to finish the point here. So
yeah.
it's crazy. My Twilight Zone. You're teaching the smaller points of the book. Now, one thing that I think that was brought up in this article that I think was a good dig down point was about how reading entire books takes you and brings you to a place of empathy that you don't get from smaller passages. You're not just looking for things to get information as soon as possible out of it. So I think the direct quote here is, books can cultivate a sophisticated form of empathy, transporting a reader into the mind of someone who lived hundreds of years ago, or a person who lived in radically different context from the reader's own. A lot of contemporary ideas of empathy are built on identification, identity politics, Kahn, the Berkeley professor, said. Reading is more complicated than that, so it enlarges your sympathies. And nothing, I think, showed this better than this tweet that I have here. We have Moby Dick, and then what Columbia University has become over Moby Dick. He said, I ain't reading all that. Free Palestine.
Oh my gosh.
That is true. And even I talked to my wife has been getting back into the books, and there's something called Goodreads where you can kind of recommend. Yeah, you could track, and other people would say, hey, this is good, read it. And so she's reading a lot more like contemporary books. And every single book has something about a woman who was either a lesbian or discriminated against or whatever. It's present in all of the books. And it's, if you only ever consume that, and even that's generous because I don't even think a lot of people are reading that. But if that's the context you live and then you take passages, it's kind of my whole gripe about how we look at the Civil War, I think, or just different eras of history, World War II, et cetera. If you look at things, small excerpts outside of context, you can't truly pretend
you can distort all you want.
Right. And Josh, I say it has been weaponized. I mean, if you look at people's current understanding of history is so shallow to the point where it's easy to manipulate. And so maybe this is a good charge for me to get back into reading a little bit more like I did in college. I mean, I'll be the first to say I don't read nearly as much as I should, but it's good to ground you. It's just, and
that's the biggest thing of the great books. That's the biggest argument for the great books is that it opens your mind and you become resistant to like ideologies that just give you the quick sugar high answers for everything.
Yeah.
If you actually are well read in the good books, you have a little bit more humility and wisdom, and you're not really susceptible to that. That was the whole reason why the recent phenomenon, relatively recent, started in the 1930s with St. John's University out in an Anglican one at that in Annapolis, was because why is modern man becoming so susceptible to these ideological movements like communism, progressivism?
Right.
We need to create educated men who are well-rounded in their understanding. That's why they brought back the great books there. And I think that's to our benefit to continue to foster that in those. Anytime I try to bring some of this stuff up and give comments, Tom, you're always so worried I'm just going to hog the microphone for 20 minutes. You're not going to get a word in edgewise.
This is not a therapy session.
I mean, I don't interrupt Erica every time when I should. Like she said, Dominic was in the 8th century. What was that about? I mean,
no, the 9th century.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, 13th. Sorry, 13th century.
I'll give you
yours off, girlfriend.
Late night last night.
I'll give you a little bit of pass. We had a late night last night. You're fired up on the election, but gotta let the mic rock a little bit. You gotta let the co-host speak.
What's this?
It's my
daycare. This is
daycare. Just because I was talking about the Hunger Games and me being 16 in the last 10 years. Fair. Okay. Any final thoughts from the crew? I feel like this was a solid episode.
I think we're good. Winding up. I'm gone. I'm headed. Speaking of great books, I'm headed to Hillsdale, Michigan tomorrow. So I will not be here on Friday. I'm pretty pumped.
Oh yeah.
Gonna see my sweet kid.
Speaking of, you want to introduce who we're going to have on Friday in your loop?
Yeah. So in my seat on Friday is a woman far above me in all things wit and wisdom, Peachy Keenan, coming in from the West Coast. It's going to be so much fun. I am going to take myself out. My daughter has a class at 11 on Friday, and I'm actually going to watch Peachy and you guys hack it out there. I'm so excited.
Buckle up, kids.
Buckle up, indeed.
She's a firecracker. So
Actually,
do not miss Friday's show.
Rosie, I wonder if you could throw in the chat or the description our interview we did with her about her book, Peachy Keenan, Domestic
Terrorist.
Not terrorist, no. Domestic, it's, what is that?
Extremist.
Extremist. Yeah. Domestic extremist. So.
One of my favorite actors of all time. I mean, she is just a riot. So she's going to be in the Thunderdome on Friday. Have fun in Hillsdale. If you guys want to help us out, leave a like on this episode, subscribe. A lot of people, we've been picking up on Rumble, which is great. So if you want to watch on Rumble, contribute in the chat. That works as well. Instagram, Twitter, we're all over the place. Leave us reviews, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thank you to everyone listening over audio. You can email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org is where you can find me. Become a champion. Shout out to all of our champions who support us the only way we're able to do what we do. And everyone have a great day. We'll be ready to rock on Friday. Josh, did you have something you'd like to say?
Well, Francis is accusing me in the chat of beard splaining.
Beard splaining. Francis, shout out.
Got him. St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, Our Lady of Guadalupe, pray for us. Everyone have a great day. We will see you guys